What's up, Moxie? HomeWOD day number 32 here. It's a Thursday, so it's a little bit of a lighter day overall. And we've got two relatively, I would say, chill pieces going on today, right? The first thing that we have is the last day of our long nasal running progression. It's a 45-minute nasal run. Whenever we started this back on week number 1, we just had a 25-minute nasal run. Added 20 minutes to that. Hopefully this has gone pretty well for you over the course of that time. And we haven't changed our speed too much, right? Just as we've gotten more comfortable with that nasal breathing. Just to give you guys a look at kind of where we're going with this nasal breathing progression, over our next few weeks, instead of continuing to add more time to our runs, we're going to try to start adding speed. And that's going to take the form of some longer intervals. So that might be something like 15 minutes on, something like 5 minutes of rest, and then another 15 minutes of running, where we're still breathing only through our nose, but we're trying to run faster now instead of just going longer. All right. So I hope this helps you. And this is really going, as we continue this progression, it's going to actually start translating more into a lot of the workouts that we're doing versus just building aerobic base. Okay. Now, moving on from there, the other piece that we have going on today is overhead squats. All right. We're going to go every 2 minutes for 5 total sets. We're going to do 5 overhead squats at a tempo. That tempo is going to be 2 seconds on the way down, a 3-second pause at the bottom, and then 2 seconds on the way up as well. All right. This is hopefully going to help us really improve and dial in our receiving position for the snatch, and also just generally improve our squatting mechanics and our overhead squat. All right. Now, for the remainder of this time, so about the next 2 minutes or so, I want to just talk about overhead positioning in the overhead squat, why it's important, and how we develop that. All right. Now, as I said just a moment ago, one of the big reasons that we train overhead squats is for the receiving position in a snatch. And if we want to be able to catch the heaviest weight possible, be able to, get under that weight aggressively, be able to support it against any kind of forward and back deviations that there might be, and then be able to stand that weight up, we need to have a stable shoulder position that's connected kind of to the rest of our midline, and then ultimately to our hips and on down the chain. All right. And the way that we get that is through an active shoulder position. All right. One of the things, though, that you do tend to see a lot is that if we don't have adequate flexibility, we're going to kind of round our shoulders forward a little bit whenever we're in the overhead squat. Whenever our shoulders rounded forward like this, armpit kind of facing down, your shoulder is more or less cut off from all the surrounding musculature that would otherwise be supporting that load. All right. And essentially what that means is that whenever I catch a snatch, let's say, or I'm performing my overhead squats, all of the weight that I'm supporting overhead is entirely focused at the shoulder joint, right? My scapula, my lats, some of these bigger muscles that can really provide a lot of stability and support aren't going to be assisting my shoulder with that weight. Whereas if I can get an active shoulder position where, let's say, my armpit's kind of facing forward and my scapula is kind of pushing up, I can support that load overhead really easily, and it's going to connect it down through the rest of the chain, right? So how do we get to that active shoulder position and hold that during the overhead squat? Well, there are 2 things that we have to think about just to get to the active shoulder position. The first one is going to be external rotation, all right? Now, an easy way to kind of feel what that position is like is just to start, we're going to be standing up. We're going to reach our hands up overhead, where at this kind of midway point, so hands at my shoulders, my palms face up, and I'm just going to raise up overhead until I get to something like an overhead squat position. This is going to be really, really similar to what we want to have whenever we're holding, whether it's a PVC pipe or a barbell up overhead. And what you're going to notice there is that your thumbs are pointing back, all right? This thumbs back position is going to generate all the external rotation that we want going through our shoulder, all right? It's going to set our shoulder in that strong position where it's kind of connected down the chain. The other thing that's going to become especially important whenever we start talking about supporting weight is that we're actually pushing our shoulder blades up a little bit as well to kind of meet that weight and counteract the force that is generated on our shoulders pushing down, right? So we want this thumbs going back, shoulder blades kind of pushing up, and then we're going to want to hold that position through the whole overhead squat. Now that's hard to do, all right? So an easy way to drill this, and I would definitely recommend that you hit this at home before you actually start adding load to your overhead squats today, is gonna be a fingertips out broomstick overhead squat, all right? The way this is gonna work, I'm gonna take my broomstick up overhead. It's gonna be resting on my palms, right? With my fingers pointed out to the side. This is gonna set my shoulder in that kind of ideal position. I can elevate my shoulders, kind of press up into that broomstick, and then holding that position, I can hit, right, my overhead squats. And that position, maintaining that on the PVC, isn't going to allow that shoulder position to change at all. It'll give you a great kind of idea of what your overhead squat should be feeling like whenever we're doing one with a barbell. So I'd recommend maybe hitting 3 sets of 5 at that same tempo that we're going to use in our working sets, and just kind of try to memorize that position. It's also going to help kind of warm up your shoulders a little bit and get you guys ready to get after those overhead squats. Hope this helps, guys, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.